All right, y'all, we're ready to get going. Thanks for bearing with me. Welcome to the talk. So today we're going to be talking about competitive hacking. The title is From Zero to Elite, a Beginner's Guide to Competitive Hacking. I'm going to assume zero knowledge on the subject, and we're just going to roll with what we have. So a little about me. I'm Galvan. I'm a born and raised Floridian, but a few years ago I packed up my life and I now live in Sweden. It's my first time in Leeds, first time speaking at a conference, as you can tell. So we're just making it happen today as we can. I work in research and development at CrowdStrike, mostly focusing on helping threat hunters advance their tooling. If any of you have questions about CrowdStrike, R&D, anything of the sorts afterwards, feel free to talk to me or connect with me on LinkedIn. But also saying that all of the opinions expressed today are my own. They are not reflective of CrowdStrike. I attribute my role directly to my experience in Capture the Flag competitions. So it's something I'm really passionate about. I've had some success in it, and it's something that I want to share with you all today. Oh, and I play rugby. I know you guys kind of like that out here in the UK, so we can talk about that too. I have quite a bit to cover. The timing on this talk can really vary based on how much y'all want to talk to me about it at the end of it. So if you miss something, or if I move too quickly, or if we go too slowly, go ahead and scan that QR code. It'll take you to a link tree with all the information for today's talk. There's the slide deck and additional resources. I've created a tooling script that will just download all the tools that you will need for hacking on a Linux device. Later. So I assume you'll scan that. I'll make it available at the end of the talk if you have missed it. So to make it abundantly clear, this talk is designed for people with absolutely no knowledge of competitive hacking. I'm going to assume you've not even heard of Pico CTF, and we'll talk about that a bit later. So we're building you up from a seedling today. We're not necessarily watering you. We're just giving you all the tools that you will need to succeed. I'll be covering what Capture the Flag competitions are, why you should get into them, how to approach hacking problems, and then eventually we'll get onto some hands-on stuff, which is a lot of fun, and I will be praying to the demo gods that they work with me on that. I will not cover anything advanced, so if you were hoping to hack into the NHS after this, I can't really help you with that, but I can give you some tools that will get you there. And we're also not talking about setting up an environment today. But again, this is something I feel like I could talk about for years, and you can always talk to me about it after the talk. And afterwards, I'm hoping you will leave with practical strategies for approaching hacking problems, a set of tools that you can use. They're really easy to learn at first, but they will take you years to master. And hopefully you will leave with the ability to understand and approach any hacking problem that you encounter. And most importantly, I want you to be excited about competitive hacking, because there is so much that you can do in this world. So you might be wondering, what is a Capture the Flag competition? Put simply, it's a gamified cybersecurity competition. The idea of a CTF originates from Capture the Flag, the children's game, where people go into enemy territory to grab a flag and bring it back to their own side for points. One of the first ever CTFs that happened was at DEF CON in 1996, and since then it has exploded. It seems like everybody has a CTF these days. Governments have CTFs, companies have CTFs, so they're independently hosted. You can find one running at all times of year. And there are three popular styles of Capture the Flag competitions. They are Attack and Defend, Jeopardy, and the Mixed style. In Attack and Defend, you are going to be given a vulnerable machine, and you'll be given a certain amount of time to make preparations and try your best to harden it. And then after that, your machine will be attacked by red teamers, pen testers, other hackers, and you will have to go through and make sure that your system stays secured. The Jeopardy style is where you'll be given a series of categories, like the US show Jeopardy, and you get to pick through ranges of difficulties and different types of problems and focus on those. This is the style that we're going to be focusing on today because it is the most beginner-friendly and accessible category. But there's also the mixed style, which puts together attack and defend and Jeopardy, where you are defending your machine while also solving problems. And that is my favorite style because you really have to work with your team to make it happen and get points. And it's just really fun being under stress sometimes. But no, you don't have to compete with a team. You can and should give yourself the grace to practice on your own and build yourself up from the ground. What's important here is knowledge. But why should you care about CTFs? Well, competitive hacking is great for so much more than clout. To put it lightly, gaining expertise in any one CTF category can change your life. For all the reasons listed on this slide, and so many more, you should get into competitive hacking. My favorite example of how life-changing CTFs can be is myself. So a few years ago, I was a poor student. I didn't have, really anything but my 2 cats. And I didn't have a degree, but I was really into competitive hacking. I really just fixated it. I had no knowledge at all. And when I first started out, I was just obsessed with learning and doing. And within a few months, after some small successes, nothing too major, I got scouted by CrowdStrike. And then, though I didn't have a degree, they saw my competition experience and what I could do just by teaching myself. And then my future employer saw that and basically hired me on the spot. And since then, I've been with them, and now I'm here in the UK speaking to you lovely people. So your life can really change so quickly just with a lot of knowledge and a lot of persistence. But I'm not saying to quit college and go full hacker gremlin mode. You don't have to do that. But I am saying that capture the flag competitions are a wonderful way for you to learn, be part of a community, and figure out where you want to be in the world of cybersecurity, because it is so vast. And when you're out here learning, you can figure out what you care to learn about, and you can really just cut the fat and save yourself time. Oh, and you can hack some really cool shit. So I've personally hacked everything on this list except for a tractor. Last year at DEF CON, there was a really cool speech about tractor hacking, though. Highly recommend looking into it. Basically, if you can dream it, you can hack it. And who doesn't want to be able to do that? That being said, if you're even slightly interested in competitive hacking, there is a place for you in this industry. And it doesn't always have to be technical. It's so welcoming, and everybody really pushes you to do your best. And that was one of my favorite parts of competitively hacking when I was doing it basically every weekend. The people I would meet, the knowledge I would gain. I took a lot of ibuprofen, but we don't have to talk about that. It was a good time. That being said, if you do choose to hack on a team, these are some common roles that you'll see. There's oftentimes a captain, a second in command, a documentation or business person, and then there are roles per specialty. The captain, they don't always have to be the most technical. They're oftentimes good at guiding people. They're the mouthpiece. They talk to the organizers. The co-captain, in my experience, is the one who can really get shit done on a computer. And they're the ones that are hands on deck when there are problems, when people are having issues. They're doing that. And then there's the business person. I started off as a business person when I was doing hacking, and I had no idea what I was doing. But what I did do was I saw what my teammates were doing. I made note of everything. I wrote it down as well as I could. And then we went over it, and I learned by watching. And then eventually I got to do. And then there's always roles per specialty. If you're good at cryptography but bad at web, you're going to do cryptography. You get to do what you like when you're on a team. But you can also learn to be a jack of all trades, of course. So how do you get started in this wonderful world of capture the flag competitions? My advice to you is to start small. This is a process that you can use for pretty much anything in life, but it works especially well with capture the flag competitions. Choose a category that interests you, or a few. Learn the basics on sites like Try Hack Me and Hack the Box. I know everybody is always talking about these sites and how expensive they can be, but they don't have to be expensive. When you're starting off, there are so many free resources out there on the websites, and these sites even have free tiers too. It's worth looking into to see if you're interested in it and how you can learn. And then once you have some knowledge or no knowledge at all, you can really just go straight into hacking and practice on sites like Pico CTF. If you've not heard of Pico CTF, it's amazing. It's a capture the flag competition that runs at all times of year. It's great for beginners, intermediate, up to advanced, I would say. Advanced gets a little weird. And the categories are robust. But most importantly, with anything in life, repeat until elite. I almost want to get that tattooed on myself, right? It's so good. Just repeat until elite. When approaching CTFs, these are a few common categories that you'll see. This is by no means extensive, but it's what I've seen as a beginner and what I've seen as a person who's done a lot of them. My favorites are web app exploitation, forensics, and reverse engineering, but you can pick whatever you want. There are tons of other categories like industrial control systems, hardware, networking, cloud, even AI and blockchain these days. As soon as new technologies come out, people are hacking it, and then you're going to find it in CTFs. But if you're overwhelmed and you don't know what categories that you're interested in, I suggest you start with these three. Web app exploitation, because the scope can be so large, and it teaches you how to narrow down a problem. When you're on a website, there's so many servers and different things that you can interact with. It's very valuable to be able to look at something and narrow down the scope and be able to form those hunches and follow them through. Password cracking, because it teaches you how to really use your tool set. You'll be seeing things like Hydra and John the Ripper, and these are tools that you can use extensively for a very long time. And open source intelligence, because it teaches you to be a better researcher. It teaches you how to look at problems differently and approach them creatively. Some general tips for approaching these problems is you can hack on things like a Windows device, but I highly recommend setting up a virtual machine and playing around with things like a Kali or Parrot box. If any of these terms are confusing, you can click on them on my slide deck later, and they will take you to places where you can read about them. You can document everything that you've done for a challenge. Point values oftentimes indicate difficulty levels. Challenge names are hints. Descriptions are also hints. And keywords are great. So when looking at a Jeopardy-style capture the flag competition, it'll oftentimes look something like this, where the name, again a hint, we're looking at this one right here, basic injection in the web category. When we see something like this, we can think types of injections that we're going to see. I'm thinking SQL, first of all. And then point value is indicative of difficulty. And then oftentimes number of solves will give you an idea of how well you'll be able to solve something depending on your difficulty level and your preference for sleeping. So this is the expanded version of the basic injection. So you can see what the problem looks like. And then it also shows you an expanded format of what the flag will generally look like. So it's in this case, it is a word, brackets, and things within the brackets. That tends to be the general format for flags within Capture the Flag competitions. But when you're a beginner, focus on knowledge, not your score. Your score is not what's going to get you hired. It very rarely is unless you're doing a government competition or more of a high-stakes competition. The most important thing is that you're learning and you know how to approach a problem. And we'll get into some live demos on approaching problems quite soon. So say you have a problem in front of you and you want to solve it. How would you do that? Well, I use something called the hacker mindset to do that. It is both a framework and a way of thinking that will help you to solve any capture the flag problem, or really most problems in life. Excuse me, I'm a bit ill, I'm losing my voice, but we're going to keep going. So it's cyclical, so you're going to keep doing it until you solve the problem. The first step is identification. The second is the gathering of information. The third is forming a hunch. Fourth, testing. And fifth, documenting. I would argue that documentation is the most important step here, because when you're dealing with problems that have really large scopes, if you're trying to solve things, it's very important that you're able to see what pieces you've explored so that you're not repeating yourself or getting lost. And now we're going into a demonstration. Okay, we're going to get fun with So we're going to explore a web exploitation problem together. So imagine that this is what we're seeing. This one is actually taken from picoctf.com. It's called Inspector. And going back to step 1, which is investigating, we're going to look here and see what it's saying. Names are oftentimes hints. So Inspector, I know that is a device that we can use in web applications, oftentimes in Firefox or any browser. And here we have a link. So we'll click on the link. I'm going to do my best here. And we're just going to click around. So this is an easy challenge. I believe the point value was... Okay, I didn't put the point value. It's something low, like 30. And it says, inspect me what, and then how. I've made my first website with HTML, CS, and JavaScript. Well, let's see what we have here. It's saying, firstly, to inspect it. So we can go directly to the inspector. And if you don't know what that is, or if you don't even know how to get to the inspector, you could say, like, website inspect. And then we'll see, oh, there's this thing called inspect element. And from there, we can go into it. And personally, I don't really like this view. Never have. I prefer to go into a view page source, see it all at once. And we're just reading, looking through, and we see right here, we found the first part of our flag. Oh, great. We have one of 3. Let's go back. We know that when we're looking at something like this, we're in the HTML, right? And I'm thinking, okay, one of 3, there's 3 different items here. Well, let's see the CSS. We can go here. Let's see. Is it the CSS? I can't really see. Yep, that's CSS. And then, oh, goody, here, 2 of 3. And we slowly start solving this problem and taking it apart. Right, then we go into the JavaScript. Yep. And 3 of 3. And just like that, we have solved our problem. And we move on to this, just looking at the problems again. So we gathered the information, we went directly to the inspector, and we asked, what is the problem asking me to do? It wants me to inspect and find a flag. Wrote that down mentally. I wasn't taking notes, but you see how this would work. Gathered information, I googled keywords, inspector, anything that stood out or that I didn't understand, I put it down. Anything relevant, if there were exploits, vulnerabilities, write-ups, those would also go into my notes. And then we formed a hunch. When I saw that the flag was broken up into 3 different parts, then I saw that one of them was in the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And an important part of forming a hunch is to look for tooling as well. If you're ever looking at something and you're like, okay, I have an idea of what it wants me to do, but I don't know how to do that, just Google what you want to do and then the word tool. Something might pop up and it'll save you a lot of time. Yeah. Thank you. And then finally, test. Don't be afraid to test your hypotheses. These environments are designed to be broken, and they can be spun up really quickly. If you break it, you can spin it up again. And take notes of behaviors, especially with web applications and reverse engineering. Did anything change? Even the smallest things. A character showing up on the screen. A different error. Different errors, they don't seem like they're useful, but I promise they are. And just make notes of those, and then Google them. Just keep repeating the process until you can solve it. And finally, document. This is an example of a password cracking problem. So this is the problem. And then these are examples of what notes could look like. And finally, just the flag. And I know documentation seems kind of boring. Nobody really enjoys it all that much. But you can win prizes for them. And prizes are fun. Competitions oftentimes have rewards for the best write-up at the end of them. And it's how I got a keyboard once, because I didn't know anything, but I knew how to type. So, it worked out pretty well. So I don't think I have time to do my other demo that I had scheduled, but it's in the slides and y'all can work it through on your own time. It's quite fun. So I will now leave room for any questions if anyone has them, and I'm also going to leave the QR code up on screen. So any questions? I'm an open book. Feel free to ask anything. Going once, going twice.